Hey, fellow babies. Saturday morning, still on my second cup of coffee. Welcome back to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. I am hopeful that you are a Patreon patron. If you are, great, thank you. You're getting this a week early. If you are not a Patreon patron, we have instructions below. Very simple, cost zero, to link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account. If you can do that, Amazon pays Shane $2.50. Unfortunately, you have to renew it every month, but that's a one click. Once you set it up, one click. So please follow the instructions. It's working. Shane is actually eating. He was down to, like, I could see his ribs. Now he's put on some body fat. Yeah, exactly. So if you can do that, we'd appreciate it. And if you can't be bothered and you're too lame to click the link and attach your Twitch account to your Prime account, and you're too cheap to support us on Patreon, please follow us on Twitter. That's at Dinfire is Shane, at Sifted Games is Sifted, obviously, at Michael Pachter. Our first question comes from Sifted from Norix Nessie. What are your thoughts on Microsoft's Project xCloud? Do you think it can work? Do you see it as being a big boost to the Xbox brand? How can Microsoft best execute this idea? Of all the guys doing streaming, Microsoft probably gets it better than the others, okay? So do I think it can work? Yes. Do I think it's a big boost to the Xbox brand? Yes. Do I think it's going to drive higher sales of Xbox? No. How can Microsoft best execute? All right, let's talk about streaming. We don't need to stream. We can distribute games cheaply to devices. So I'm never going to get an Xbox One quality graphics card in a phone. But I might get an Xbox One graphics card in my docking station. Maybe you make this thing a little higher. Maybe you make the docking station on top of your Apple TV and tell people, here's your Apple TV, it's a fatter box. It's got a GPU in it, exactly the same processing power as a PS4 and an Xbox One. Plug your phone in to your Apple TV so it's always on, and then download a game to your 256 gigs of flash on your phone, and the CPU in the phone and the GPU in the docking station will play the game and will magically make it go to your TV because your Apple TV is already hooked up to your TV, and here's a controller to play a game. That's going to happen. So when streaming was an idea back in 2007, I think, with On Live, and then in 2008, 2009 with Gaikai, and when Sony bought Gaikai for, I want to say, $468 million, shoot me if I'm off by more than 20, but it's 400-something million dollars. When they bought that, when On Live got bought by Sony out of bankruptcy because it didn't work, let's roll back to 2007. In 2007, this kind of processing power was super expensive. In 2007, the concept was, let's put the processors in the cloud, and let's have blade servers, and let's figure out a way to allocate out the processing power on each of these blades. So a couple of dozen players can use the same blade. Let's have a server farm with 200 blade servers, and then you can have 200 times, say, 20 players. We can have 4,000 people playing per server farm, and we can stream the games, and everybody has their own CPU in the cloud, and let's stream it, and latency was a problem. And the reason I say we're going to come up with a docking station CPU, GPU is latency is not a problem when all the processing is local. Microsoft knows this. They know that there's going to be devices that are going to do the same thing as their cloud service. So if you read about Project Scarlett, I believe they call it, which is the new Xbox, there's these rumors, which are really reliable. Rumors in the games industry are pretty reliable because everybody leaks everything. Microsoft's making 2 Xboxes, not one. What are they? One is a big fatty fat Xbox 2, 3, 720, whatever they call it. That's going to be the $300, $500 box. The other is an Xbox stick. It's an Xbox streaming device. It's an Xbox branded device that will let the signal get to your TV, and you won't need the local processor. It may or may not have a CPU, GPU in it. We don't know yet. But let's roll out 10 years from now. How expensive is it to put a CPU and a GPU in every television? And the answer is going to be 25 bucks, and they're just going to do it. So if processing power gets so cheap that everybody has it, then you don't need to stream. You can render locally, which is what they're going to do. I think that a standalone streaming subscription is cool. It's hard to play multiplayer and have no latency. It works, but it doesn't. It works if you let them shove you into matches and everybody you play with is within 30 miles, then the latency is not a big deal. But if you want to play with your friends and they're 2,500 miles away, you're going to get latency. It's really hard to overcome. And just do the math on the speed of light over 2,500 miles. It's milliseconds. It's not a zero. It adds up. So the truth is, I think what Microsoft's doing is smart, not because of the technology, not because of the streaming technology. What they're doing is they've got their catalog in their subscription service that they charge 10 bucks for per month, that they're encouraging publishers to give away games that were one iteration old. So Fallout 4, The Division 1, let people play those games on stream, and then you find out you love The Division, you can't wait to buy The Division 2. You love Fallout, you can't wait to buy Fallout 76. So I think Microsoft has a chance of being kind of the broker in between what the publishers want, which is to make the most money possible, and what the consumer wants, which is to try a lot of games. And by streaming, they can give you a lot of games. I don't think you're going to get brand new release games on any of these services except from the sponsor of the service. So Microsoft will give you Gears of War when it comes out, or Halo when it comes out, because they own it. But EA will give you FIFA or Battlefield because they own it. But you're not going to get Call of Duty on the Microsoft service or on the EA service ever, because Activision owns it and they want all the money. So more, I would think of these as just the way you think of Netflix, that you don't go on Netflix and expect to see this year's television shows. You do expect to see Netflix own content, so they're originals, of course, and that's exactly what Microsoft's going to be: old games and new originals, and same as EA. Where Microsoft's differentiated is they understand that the world is moving to the cloud with distributed computing through devices. It won't be your phone, it'll probably be your PC. But it doesn't matter. If they can figure out how to make my phone talk to my TV, why can't my PC talk to my TV? My PC CPU, GPU is 10x faster than an Xbox. So why can't I download the game to my PC and play it on my TV? I can. Somebody just has to do it for me and not make me run a wire, through the floor to the next room. So for sure, it's going to happen. Microsoft is acknowledging that makes the Xbox obsolete. So they're going to say, we have two different Xboxes. One for the hardcore aficionado who's willing to pay whatever it takes to play the latest and greatest, and the other for the casual guy who doesn't have to have the best. So think about it as 4K next generation, 4K 240 frames a second versus 1080p 60 frames a second. That's kind of the difference. And if you're casual, 1080p 60 frames a second is plenty. So I think actually Microsoft's doing the right thing. The two winners at the end of the day are going to be Microsoft and Amazon. Let's see what Sony does, because Sony's got the assets to pull this off. They have Gaikai on Live and PS Now, that's what they call them. They can pull this off. It'll be interesting to see if they recognize that PS5 might be challenged to sell into competition from streaming services that don't require any special hardware. That you already have an Echo, and Amazon says, hey, good news, your Echo will play games. Wow. How about your Ring camera will play games? Wow. I mean, Amazon's got some stuff going on that nobody quite gets, but it's powerful. Okay, fellow babies, before I get to question 2, don't forget to click that link and link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account so that Shane can get paid this month. All right. Next question from Sifted from Tibble and Bits. What do you think caused Amazon to end its 20% video game pre-order discount with Prime? Was it pressure from the publishers? Were the publishers or Amazon losing the most money with the program? All right, it's a great question, and the simple answer is it's a profit deal. So the truth is that the publishers never want to discount ever. Like, they hate discounting. And, you know, I'd encourage you guys to go into Walmart and count all the Louis Vuitton handbags that are for sale at Walmart. And I'm not saying it like Walmart customers can't afford Louis Vuitton handbags. Louis Vuitton doesn't discount, period. Go into Target and go into the eyeglasses section and count all the Oakley sunglasses. And they might have some. They don't have them all because they value that brand and they want to make sure that they keep premium pricing and no discounting. So game publishers are the same way. They have their brands. It's bad for the Call of Duty brand if the game is sold for 48 instead of 60 bucks. Publishers have something called minimum advertised price, MAP pricing, minimum advertised price. And the rules of MAP are, if you, a retailer, which includes Amazon, would like to get promotional spending dollars from us, the publisher, they call those vendor allowances, then you agree you will not advertise a price below full retail for a limited period of time, typically 30 days, sometimes 60, it depends on the game. So vendor allowance dollars are meaningful. They're $2 per unit discounted. So if a wholesale game is sold for 48 bucks, the publisher gives a discount. They call it a vendor allowance. They lower the wholesale price by $2. They charge the retailer only 46, and the retailer agrees to promote the game. So those of you who still buy physical games, you can kind of remember walking into a GameStop and there's a big point of sale display for Red Dead Redemption. Drive up to the GameStop, there's Red Dead Redemption posters all over the wall. You know, for all I know, the clerk is wearing a Red Dead Redemption t-shirt. That's point of sale promotion by retail that's funded by the seller, the publisher, Take-Two. It's called vendor allowance. The vendor, Take-Two, gives the retailer an allowance of $2. And if GameStop's going to sell 1 million copies of Red Dead, they're happy to spend that $2 million that they get on promoting the game. And that helps everybody. Boot up your dashboard. It's promoting Red Dead Redemption right now. There it is. You know, and if this is airing later, it's promoting Fallout. It's promoting whatever, Battlefield, whatever the game of the week is. That is vendor allowance dollars asking Microsoft and Sony to promote. If you get a Best Buy circular in the mail, every television has this week's movie on it. They tend to show games now too. The pictures of the TVs, it costs Best Buy nothing to paint onto the TV Call of Duty or Red Dead Redemption, but they get $2 per unit for the first couple weeks. But the trick was MAP, minimum advertised price. Amazon is not allowed to discount the game. So when they had their $48 program, their 20% discount, it didn't show. But typically it said, put the item in your cart to see the price. And so it wasn't advertised. So it was Amazon's way of playing around with the word advertised. They were charging 48. They had all sorts of things on the Amazon website that said, if you buy games here, pre-order or within 2 weeks of launch, you get 20% off. But they never said $48. They just said, check out. And when you check out, it shows up in your cart and it's 48. It actually shows up at 60 and then less 20% discount 12. So they were doing that and the publishers hated it. And the truth is, no, the publishers didn't participate at all until 2018. So in mid 2018, gosh, I gotta remember what month, when I first heard this, certainly before Madden, you started getting pushback from publishers. I think you were getting publishers who were restricting supply to Amazon, so they weren't getting Nintendo games at all. They just weren't even distributed there. And Amazon wouldn't get them until 2 weeks after launch. So Nintendo was really tough with them, like, you're not discounting our game, period, just screw you, you're not getting it. Other publishers started to do that as well. Amazon changed the plan from a 20% discount to a $10 discount, and they only offer selected games. So I'm pretty sure Far Cry was in there. I'm pretty sure Assassin's Creed was in there, and Wolfenstein was in there, and I'm pretty sure Fallout's in there. But Red Dead, And the interesting thing about Red Dead, here's our research. I'm a research analyst. My associate Nick loves games, plays everything. Take-Two, this isn't personal, they don't do this just to me. They don't send out free copies of games. I have no idea why. A download code would cost them nothing, but we don't get free games from them. So if we ever want to play a Take-Two game, we have to actually purchase them. And so Nick pre-ordered Red Dead on Amazon, and his instant response from Amazon was, we'll notify you of the date of availability at a later date in time. He got his notice of availability on Sunday, October 20th or 21, whatever that was, 20th, 21. Then it said, good news, we'll have Red Dead for available on its launch date of October 26th. It's the first time he heard it from Amazon, and they did in fact ship it to him, and he did in fact receive it on Friday, October 26th. So Take-Two held back because screw you, you're not advertising our game at a discount and we don't need you. They relented and they gave it to them, so more power to Take-Two. So I don't bother buying their games because I get so much free shit that I just don't need to play their games too. I might buy this Red Dead, I might break down, but I probably, my associate bought a physical copy, so when he's done I'll probably just take his and play it. So back to Amazon. Publishers are pulling back and they don't like it. They didn't give them vendor allowance dollars. Some publishers like Nintendo said, no, you're not getting our games, period. Amazon was eating that $12. And in fairness, they're buying them for $48 and they're selling them for $48. So they're not losing money. I mean, they're gonna have a warehouse anyway. The incremental cost to them is just shipping, but typically the people who did it are Prime members. You had to be a Prime member. So they don't have any real, I mean, the incremental cost is $1 to mail you the game. So and if they got vendor allowance dollars, then that's how they covered it, but I don't think they were getting them, which is why, like Red Dead, no way are they getting vendor allowance dollars, they didn't have the game. So they ended it because it was just a waste and they weren't seeing it driving enough traffic to make a difference. And I think that, in the scheme of things, they said, why not sell games for $60 and make 12 and use that money to give you some free music and free movies and TV shows on Amazon Prime Instant Video instead of subsidizing games and not getting anything from it. So I think that's the answer, but it's a profit deal. Our next question from SIFTD from Derek D111. Hi, Mr. Pachter. A lot of people fear that since Call of Duty Black Ops 4 is being well received both critically and commercially without a traditional single-player campaign, that future entries in the series will also not have a campaign. How do you feel about this? Will it convince other publishers to ditch single-player? How can Activision continue to do this now that Battle Royale is part of the multiplayer suite and won't be a new feature going forward? That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I mean, let's be real. 20 years ago, all games were single-player, and I don't know, Counter-Strike, Half-Life 3, Counter-Strike, Half-Life 2. Counter-Strike was the first real multiplayer game. I mean, I know there were multiplayer games, but the first commercially successful multiplayer game, which was a player mod. And I think, multiplayer kind of grew out of that. People saw Counter-Strike and said, wow, gamers like this enough to create it. Let's make other multiplayer games. But I don't think that there's ever been a desire of the publishers to eliminate single player. I think that, and if you look at a company like Take-Two, like Rockstar, their forte is single player games. And again, credit where credit's due. GTA Online is phenomenal, but the game they made was GTA 5, which is a single player game. Red Dead Online isn't out yet. It probably will be phenomenal, but the game that's getting the 95 and 96 review scores is a single player campaign. So, Fallout 76 is going to be multiplayer, but I think that that's an experiment from Bethesda, because Bethesda has never really made Elder Scrolls Online. They've never really made a successful multiplayer game, so we'll see. I think actually Bethesda's probably going to mix it up, and Fallout 76 is going to be collaborative and cooperative as opposed to always trying to kill people. I think you're going to be able to play the game by building societies with others and leveling up and being a powerful guy, but you also will be able to attack others. I think it'll be fascinating to play. I'm looking forward to it. But point is that single player is reaching less and less and less of a percentage of the audience each time, but it's still meaningful. Like the 95 million or 100 million people who bought GTA, I don't believe that very many of that, no more than 10% bought it only to play GT Online. I think 95 million or 100 million people tried the single player campaign. And that shows that if you make compelling single player content, people will come. So, we can argue about whether Treyarch is better at multiplayer than single player, but I think their single player campaigns are fun. I don't think they dropped the single player campaign lightly. I think they did it because they ran into crunch, and it was either don't have blackout or do, and that something had to give. Regardless, though, I think that single player is kind of what differentiates games, for $60 from free-to-play games. And, why can't Call of Duty Blackout be free-to-play? That was an earlier question last week. It can be, but Call of Duty single player will never be free-to-play. It's the movie that is a self-contained 2-hour experience versus the TV show that goes on forever and gets new content every week. That's single player versus multiplayer. And, the artists who make these games like making movies. They just do. So Battlefront 1 and Titanfall were multiplayer only. And, that they came back and gave you single player campaigns in the sequels. I think that there's enough of an audience that cares that, and some of my competitors, this is hilarious. Call of Duty put out its first 3-day press release, $500 million of sales, flat with last year, down 50 million from the last Black Ops. And Activision stock went down. And a bunch of my competitors go, oh, 500 million is not enough. It should be 700 million. And it's like, wow, it launched a month early. So some of you guys didn't know it came out. For sure, any of you who buy it as a gift for somebody else, you didn't need to buy it opening weekend. You could buy it for Christmas later. So that's at least 5% downdraft. And for sure, some of you like single player. That's at least another 10%. Now we can argue about whether that downdraft of 15% or so is offset by Blackout, but nobody bought it for Blackout until they heard about it, until you heard how great it is. So opening weekend was destined to be down, and my competitors don't get that. They were all making noise about how the game should have been selling 700 million. So, but the trick is single player not being in the game causes some people not to buy it, for sure. And so I think that if it doesn't cost a lot to make a single player campaign, I think, and it doesn't. I mean, when you look at Call of Duty, 3-year development cycle, 200 guys, 100,000 apiece, it's $60 million to make the game. There's just no chance that more than 20% of that is single player. So for $12 million, you can make a single player campaign. If you grow your sales by 10%, that's 2 million units, you're gonna make an extra 100 million. We'll do the math, it's a profit deal. Spend 12, make 100, that's a pretty good deal. So no, they're not gonna abandon it if they actually believe 10% care. So I would make sure that you're vocal if you like single player. You tell everybody who will listen how much you hate that there's no single player in Call of Duty, and you'll keep getting them. Question from SIFTD from Bloompi. With the closure of Telltale Games and the sudden mass layoffs, the constant reports about crunch and the supposed 100-hour work weeks at Rockstar, do you think game developers are just grown accustomed to being mistreated? Do you think eliminating at-will work laws would help? How can we make our industry healthier for people who make our favorite games? Okay, I'm going to lecture you guys on politics. Nobody's accustomed to being mistreated, and the truth is that, Telltale, it doesn't exist anymore, and Rockstar are not going to be able to attract talented employees if they don't treat them right. So the concept in employment is you need to recruit good employees, you need to, hire them, and then you need to retain them. And the cost of turnover is significant, right? So let's say you're an illustrator on a complicated looking game like Red Dead or Fallout, and you've done 2/3 of the work, and then they mistreat you and you quit. How easy is it to replace you? You got to hire an illustrator who knows how to texture shade horses in motion or whatever. Like, that's a pretty frickin' special skill. I would rather have the guy who's been doing it for 6 years stay there than hire a newbie and have them try to figure it out. It's just going to screw up the process. So it's in the best interest of the developers to keep their good employees, and you can't keep people unless you treat them well. So, your question about are they accustomed to being mistreated, everybody has a breaking point, and so let's just use hours. Everybody knows coming in they're going to work 40-hour weeks every week, and they know that they're going to work 50-hour weeks occasionally and 60-hour weeks occasionally. There's a point where it gets to be so obscene. 12-hour days are long, and weekends are unreasonable for anybody who's got a life outside of work. So 12-hour days, I think a lot of guys are willing to do 60 hours. And so the answer is up to 60, yes, game developers are accustomed to that. Over 60, when you start working 14-hour days, you lose efficiency. You're not doing a good job. You're missing out on sleep. You're irritable with your friends and family, and your life starts to suffer. And that's 14 hours. That's 70 hours a week. 100 is ridiculous. I'm sorry. 100 is, 7 days a week at whatever that is, 14 hours. That's just crazy. You can keep that up for about a week. Nobody can do it. So I'm not questioning that this really happened. I'm not at all disputing it. Nobody's accustomed to that, and nobody will ever say, yeah, I love it, I can't wait. I get it if you're Jeff Bezos and you're founding Amazon the first week, and the first year, if you work 100 hours a week, it'll turn into Amazon and you're a centibillionaire. Okay, but if you're an employee, no way. The at-will states tend to be that you lose your ability to claim that you were fired for any reason. You never waive your rights if you're fired on a discriminatory basis. So if they fire you because you're over a certain age, or because you're a certain gender, or because you have a sexual preference or whatever, you can always win those. But the ones who say, wait a minute, you fired me and I deserve severance pay, yeah, that's at will. California is at will, so you're not guaranteed that. The flip side, though, by the way, in at will is non-competes are invalid. They don't work. So if you quit a job and they say, but you have a non-compete agreement, you say to your employer, good luck enforcing it at will. It works for the employee too. So you can quit. Anyway, that's a long story. But I think your question is, will eliminating all this help? It won't happen. Okay, we're not going to eliminate right to work or at will, because to say it's okay, we require game developers to be unionized, let's say California did that, then all that would happen is the developers would move to Tennessee or South Carolina. And we can argue about whether they get good quality workers. They get good quality workers in Canada, I don't actually know the rules like in Washington State, but or Texas, but there's good quality developers in Washington State and Texas. The guys who made Command & Conquer, remember Lewis Castle? Nevada. Like, he was in Las Vegas. I don't even know where his studio was. I think it was in Las Vegas. The truth is, and Shane and I were talking about this before we started taping today, California is a great place. And we have a lot of really great universities, and we turn out a lot of really smart, engineers and game developers. But all those guys can't afford to live here. It takes $300,000 of income to buy the average house in San Francisco. If you move your studio to Tennessee and you show the developer that he's going to get a 5-bedroom house on a half an acre for a couple $100,000, that's pretty attractive, and he actually might want that job. And the point is, if you're going to pay the developer $100,000, is he better off living in Tennessee on $100,000, or is he better off living in San Francisco? Answer, Tennessee. Eliminating at-will work laws will not help. And so the last question, how can we make our industry healthier? Well, the Telltale closure was due to poor management. Telltale blew it. They waited until they were too far gone to go look for money, and they really relied on the beneficence of investors who don't invest unless they think they're going to get paid back, profit deal. So the Telltale management blew it, and they didn't handle it well. And unfortunately, I think one of the companies that was supposed to fund them was like Lionsgate Films or something, and the money just didn't come up because Lionsgate is a public company who, I think it was them, who has shareholders, and their shareholders will fire the CEO if he makes a $50 million investment. It goes to zero. So they just blew it. And no at-will union is going to stop that. The only thing a union will negotiate is if you fire an employee, you give them 3 months pay and health care for 18 months and stuff like that. Good luck in bankruptcy. So, Telltale declares bankruptcy, all that stuff gets discharged and the employees can sue, but there's nothing left to buy or nothing left to attach. So the problem is, that we actually need, healthy companies employing people. And as an employee, if you ever choose to go to work somewhere, look at the health of the company. Check out the people who hire you. Had you looked at Telltale's financial statements, I think you would have seen this coming, for real. And the trade-off is, yeah, I know, I got the resume value at working on Red Dead. I completely agree that's super valuable. Is that more valuable than seeing your kids? I mean, ask yourself why we're here. What are we on this planet for? And I'm not on this planet to film Pachter Factor videos and get a charge out of having 44,000 followers on Twitter. I'm here to be a good citizen, pay my taxes, provide a healthy, environment for my family, make sure my kids are doing good things and they're productive and they get educated and they're productive members of society. That's the best thing I can do for the planet. The job and what I earn is secondary. And if my employer is great, but if my employer was like, sorry, but we're going to cut your pay in half and make you work twice as many hours, go find another job. All right, that's it for us. Thanks for joining us on Pachter Factor. We'll see you next week. Let me give you a quick little Scotch update, just a little more Scotch. So now that you've gone out and you bought yourself that bottle of Glenlivet, either you like it or you don't. And I had a big talk last night with some young people. We had my daughters are friends with people that are like 10 years older than them. So I had all these late 20s people in my home last night. And the guys were drinking Scotch and the women were like, ew, icky. Scotch is an acquired taste. And so I would say, I don't get this at all, but this is just true. The older you get, the more likely you are to drink and enjoy brown liquor, brown colored spirits. The younger you are, the more likely you are to drink clear colored liquors like rum and vodka and gin. Gin's a very odd flavored thing, but for some reason people like it. And they're all fine. I mean, if you can drink responsibly, I don't suggest you get hammered on any of this stuff. But I don't know any Scotch drinkers who drink Scotch to get hammered. That's just not what you do it for. Scotch is a sipping whiskey, as is bourbon. I like bourbon. It's a little harsher flavored, but Scotch is the one I choose. So if you've tried Glenlivet and Glenfiddich and you like them, and you've graduated to Balvenie and Aberlour, I forgot to mention Aberlour, and Dalmore, and you really like them, now is the time to start educating yourself and getting a little more sophisticated. And so what I would suggest you do is, once you decide you like brown whiskey and you've tried these things, start to experiment. And I would solely go on price. And so if you're up to $40 a bottle liquor, which again, if you're a normal human, you drink 3 times a week at most, and you drink 3 ounces at a sitting. So 9 ounces a week, and a bottle is 25. So literally a bottle will last you 3 weeks. So that $40, 3 weeks of, meaning you'll get 9 different, sittings of drinking the whiskey. That's pretty good for $40. It's just not expensive. It's literally about like having a Starbucks, so it's really worth the effort to get to know it. When you decide you found the $40 whiskeys that you like, now start looking at 50. And again, the variety is unbelievable. Try them. There's different finishes. So, somebody just hit me up on Twitter. They tried the Balvenie Caribbean cask at $65, and they just think it's phenomenal. Is there anything else like that? Well, Glenmorangie has a bunch of finishes, literally about a dozen. They go in and out. They're not always available, but I would try those first. The average of all those is about $55, so they're not crazy expensive, but they have one that's finished in Burgundy. So it's a red wine finished whiskey. It's a dark color. It's almost dark brown, like a hint of red. It's really interesting. I'm not sure it's my favorite, but you can actually, the aftertaste is wine. There's one finished in port. There's one finished in sherry. There's one called La Santa, the most interesting thing ever. It's finished in Sauterne. look up Sauterne. It's sweet white wine, and it's expensive. Sauternes are really expensive, but my favorite of all the Glenmorangie special finishes. There's one finished in Madeira. I mean, really interesting. One finished in bourbon. Really interesting. So before you go crazy on spending $100 and $200 a bottle, try the Glenmorangie different finishes and take notes. Write down what you like and don't like. And you're going to not probably go out and spend $500 and buy 10 of them at once. It'll take you 2 or 3 years to go through this. I am self-educated. This is how I learned. Sip, go through it. If you don't like it, I don't know what to tell you. You got to give it away. You're going to know if you hate red wine, you're not going to like the Burgundy finish wine. I'm sorry, it's just not going to work for you. If you hate sweet wine, and again, it's hard to say you're going to hate this, you might not like the one finished in Sauterne. The Balvenie Caribbean cask is finished in rum. It's unreal, but $65. But try them all, and that'll keep you busy for another year or two. You know, now for the next year, you get through that, and then I'll give you another lesson on what to do once you've gotten through that. So I know we're giving you these in sequential weeks, but just stuff to look at. And, you know, you can Google, barrel finishes or Scotch finish, F-I-N-I-C-S-H, F-I-N-I-S-H, would probably be the right way to look at it. And you'll get a lot of them. And if you go to Bevmo or, online, type in, Scotch and finish, because they'll all say, finished in port, finished in sherry, like that.